Welcome back to the Tennis Doctors, where physicians discuss the world of men's professional tennis. As always, I'm Dr. Jay Sridhar, and joining me for this impromptu two-person episode, Dr. Arjun Watani. Arjun, welcome.
Hey, glad to be back and also excited because this is our 10th live or videoed episode.
And that's
10th.
great. And we have a small but loyal following that's continued to grow thanks to Guru, who keeps dropping comments on every video. Wherever you are, Guru, shout out to you. And shout out to the folks who watch. So we had to jump on that. We weren't planning to do an episode today. We were going to wait for the semis like we have the last couple big events, but big upsets on the men's side. It's about as open as it could be, Arjun. You were at the Medvedev Kyrgios match last night, live, our live correspondent, where Daniil Medvedev, the world's #1 player, the defending US Open champion, lost in 4 sets to Nick Kyrgios. And not only did he lose, it was not a fluke. It was not tight. It was tight at times, but it was a pretty comprehensive victory for Nick Kyrgios. He was start to finish pretty much the better player the whole match. What did you take away from watching that match live?
I was amazed. I was amazed how he played, especially first his game. I've never seen him play in person, and we see it on TV how flat his backhand is. But watching it, how you could slide a credit card under the distance it goes above the net. It may like maybe an inch above the net, and so that's actually a strength for his backhand. I was very impressed. Of course, if he's ever off or ever miss hitting it, it flies out. But I was just amazed at that. Then his touch with the volleys, his drop shots, his serve was impeccable that yesterday, just hitting
Mhm.
spots after spots. But then the biggest thing that stood out to me was his mentality. He was pumped up the entire match. He was down at times. He threw his racket a couple times, but U.S. Open, the fans love it, and the umpire didn't give him a single warning.
Yeah.
And this just feeds into it, and he's loving it. He loves the freedom there, and he's made for the big stage at U.S. Open with the crowd really roaring him on. I think he has a shot at winning his next match and against Kachanov. I know they had a couple tough previous history
Yeah.
of matches. The last one in Australian Open went 5 sets.
Yeah.
I caught a little bit of the Kachanov match too, and wasn't too impressed with his match with PCB. It was kind of going back and forth. PCB wasn't playing his greatest tennis either. And
Yeah.
kind of just took the lead and kind of rolled with it.
Yeah.
I never saw a dominant performance for him. But if I had to point and say between those two, um, who's going to electrify the crowd and get the crowd on their side and
Let's hold the prediction because we're gonna come back to that. But
yeah.
I want to make a couple comments. When I heard you're going to the match, I really didn't want to burst your bubble, but I've been to a Kyrgios match live before 4 years ago in Miami. He played Zverev. It was wholly unmemorable because he just clearly did not want to be there that night. I don't know if he went partying the night before. I don't know what was going on, but it was boring. It was boring to watch because when he's not engaged, it's very boring because he's a big server who doesn't return well when he's not engaged. So you have short points and short games and a lot of backhands in the net because, like you said, he hits super flat. And if he's off even a little bit, he doesn't have much margin for error. Yeah, I was just so impressed how focused and dialed in and really professional. That was the word we
Yeah.
used, right? He has been professional in the
Yeah.
sense he is beating the people he's supposed to beat. He is holding a serve, and every time you think he's going to lose it a little bit,
Yeah.
he holds back. Now he did hit a ball. You weren't listening to the commentary because you were live. He hit a ball that hit the backstop, and they were on the
Yeah.
yeah. It was pretty close
That
to
was scary.
hitting a fan. If that happened, then he'd be defaulted. He ran across the net to hit a ball, not knowing there was not a rule against that, thinking he was being funny or clever. He threw his racket. He cursed a ton, and he's kind of calling the umpire's bluff because if you gave him a penalty for every time he cursed or dropped an F-bomb, he would be thrown out after an hour.
Yeah.
Medvedev was interesting because I don't know if you caught this because you were live. From the commentary, it was interesting. Medvedev was really trying to keep the umpire honest. He kept complaining to the umpire about obscenities. He complained about Kyrgios hitting the ball and not getting a warning. He complained that Kyrgios was talking across the court to his camp and it was very distracting between his first and second serves, which is the same thing. Tsitsipas complained about Kyrgios talking too. And it's interesting how agitated Medvedev gets. I think the real takeaway is that's not a good matchup for Daniil Medvedev, and he's 1-4 we talked about this when we did our 2019 US Open final recap, Nadal Medvedev.
Hmm.
Medvedev's kryptonite is a lack of variety, and he does not take time away from you. He is
Hmm.
not a dictator. He's got a great serve, which makes you think of him as an aggressive player, but he really isn't.
Yeah.
So if you're getting his serve back into play and you're getting neutral, he beats you with consistency. And guys who aren't bothered by that, in a sense, like Kyrgios is not bothered by that because he doesn't feel rushed for time. He can drop shot him to depth, and he doesn't get bored because he's still a top player. He's not bored like if he's playing like Batista Agut out on court, 17.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, in a way, lines up really well for Kyrgios. He's only lost that one match at the Aussie Open when he didn't really look in shape and he fell off.
Yeah.
And that being said, it was a comprehensive victory. Tennis is, even in quote unquote comprehensive victories, tennis is a margin of a couple of points. Kyrgios saved 3 set points. One of his volleys was barely on the line that saved a set point. If he loses that first set, I think it would have been devastating to him because he was up a break in that set. He was up 5-3 in the tiebreak. And he should have won that set, and he did win it. But I think if he loses that set, maybe the whole match turns out differently. And now today, big upset city, Tiafoe Nadal, little bit of a different sort of match, but the same sort of thing. Tiafoe's got that flat backhand, doesn't really travel much over the net, really penetrates the court. I think the quality of play was a lot lower from what I saw, Arjun. I mean, I think Tiafoe wasn't serving great. Nadal wasn't serving great, yet they were both holding with ease because both of them were struggling to return. I don't know how much the conditions or the weather or the roof played into it. Nadal basically kept it simple after the match. He just said, look, he played well and I didn't play well, and that was it. I would kind of agree. I think it was a low quality but dramatic match. Big upset, obviously, but maybe not that surprising considering Nadal's coming off the injury.
Yeah. With Tiafoe, I'm giving him a lot more respect than I did before the tournament. Coming in, I thought he was kind of just a streaky player.
You said less talented than Taylor Fritz is what you said.
I did say less talented than Taylor Fritz, but this was a worse Nadal than Taylor Fritz had played at the Indian Wells or at Wimbledon. So to be fair, Nadal was not playing his best tennis. Or even his at his peak fitness in the past. His legs gave out in this tournament. His serve was, I think you mentioned he changed his toss and changed his serve. He's not the same. So, all props to Tiafoe. He took the opportunity and he ran with it. So he deserves it.
It's funny you said the Taylor Fritz Wimbledon match. I really think Tiafoe could have fritzed this match away if Nadal had been a little sharper because, again, all credit to him. And I was thinking about this match afterward. There were a couple of points, right? Like Tiafoe breaks in the first set. It goes up 4-3, and then he has kind of a shaky game. And then at 30-all, he puts a very weak second serve, and Nadal dumps it in the net, right?
Yeah.
If Nadal puts pressure on him, does he crack?
Yeah.
Second set, he cracked. Third set, he was pretty good, but even the commentators were like, he looks a little flat. And then Nadal gave him something. And Nadal, part of it is he's struggling to serve. And I think double faults are so deflating for you when you play tennis, and they're so inflating for your opponent. 3 points like that are awesome when you're returning.
Yeah.
And you look, full credit. Look, he had some break points. He was down in the fifth. He held them. Yeah. But look, he got broken with a horrific volley that he shouldn't have missed. He was clearly bothered by the roof closing. And then Dahl turned around and gave him 2 double faults right back and broke. And my point is, and we'll talk about moving forward, a lot of credit to Frances Tiafoe. I don't know if this fully exercises all the demons he's had closing matches. Yeah. I was actually fascinated to see, would he have to serve this out? Turned out Nadal was kind of done at that point, and he didn't have to serve it out. Yeah. But I think it would have been I didn't trust him to serve it out. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in his post-match interview, he said he was up 40-love at what was this, 4-3, 40-love, and just
got back to deuce.
It got back to deuce. He said himself, like, his legs were cement. He was super nervous. He dumped a couple of easy ones.
Right.
But luckily Nadal also made a couple of errors around the deuce points and close it out. And yeah, you're right. Nadal kind of essentially lost the match at the end rather than Tiafoe having to win it.
Yeah.
But it was Tiafoe still played solid enough to take the opportunity. So.
And credit to Nadal. Moya talked about before this match how they had to adjust his toss and work around that. But Nadal, after the match, he just said this was mental. He's like, I was playing great in practice last week. This is a lack of match practice. This was me, this whole week against Hijikata, against Fognini, even against Gasquet in the third set. It's really hard to walk into a tournament without real match practice and just win.
Yeah.
especially at age 36. And I don't want to hear, I'm a big Nadal fan. I don't want to hear a single injury excuse. He didn't use that excuse.
Yeah.
He's 36. Everything hurts when you get over 30, 34, 35 every day. And it hurts more and more each time. These are not injuries. Like they are injuries,
Yeah.
but they're also sort of expected. Wear and tear injuries increase as you get older. He
Yeah.
didn't break his leg like Zverev broke it at the French Open. He pulled an ab, and at that age, it takes months for that to recover, not a week. Like Carlos Alcaraz could walk out of bed a week later and just be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
So I think at some point perspective is needed. He had a phenomenal year at the Slams. He's got a baby coming in the way that he's excited. His wife's expecting.
Mm-hmm.
He very well might be year-end number one. We're going to get to that in a minute to kind of close out the show because there's some interesting stuff brewing. But now, Arjun, let's assume, right, Sinner's up a set and a break, and Ivashka hasn't held serve yet,
Yeah.
and he's probably going to win. Alcaraz is still waiting for Sabalenka and Collins to get off court to play Cilic. And I don't want to besmirch Cilic. He's the only Grand Slam champion left in the draw right now. He has the most pedigree of anyone left. But let's assume Carlos beats Cilic. We have 8 guys left who none of them have won slams. And it's really hard to separate who the favorite is. And I don't know if anyone really wants to be the favorite.
And I don't think there is a favorite.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, I would say this. I don't pick any one player over the field if I'm betting. I don't pick any 2 players over the field if I'm betting. Maybe I think it gets to 4. I think I would take any one of Alcaraz, Sinner, Kyrgios, and Berrettini, not in that order, over the field.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm not betting.
Yeah.
I don't feel confident because I just think like this is one of those scenarios. I think Alcaraz and Sinner, if they play, obviously only one of them is going to advance. They would probably be the favorite in that semi.
Yeah.
But that would be their first Grand Slam semi for either of them. Who says if they get tight? Who knows how they would respond to that moment? They could play a 5-set grinding match and be done. Sinner gets hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So Rublev and Tiafoe are playing tomorrow. That's a toss-up. They played a 5-setter last year. Rublev's coming off. That's an emotional match for Tiafoe. Is he going to be nervous or is he going to be excited? Is Rublev going to be nervous? This is his best chance to get to a semi. He's been to the Grand Slam quarters so many times. Will he be nervous? He was crying after his 3rd round match. I feel like that half, it's probably the winner of Alcaraz Sinner, but really, really hard to pick.
Yeah, I can't imagine if Tiafoe wins, I can't imagine him beating a Sinner or Alcaraz in the semis and stepping up to that moment yet. He's getting better as each match goes on and as a year progresses. But he is box office. He's an exciting, electric player, and the entire crowd will be with him. But it is looking at the history. I think Alcaraz or a Sinner would beat the other half of that quarter. But then between Sinner and Alcaraz, it's really hard to say. Sinner is very streaky. When he's on and he's fire. Alcaraz hasn't dropped a set this tournament, so I'm leaning towards him winning, but that's a toss up too. And then Rublev Tiafoe toss up as well.
You could argue that Jannik Sinner is the best returner on tour when Novak Djokovic is not playing.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal returner.
Yeah.
He's been winning. I don't know what happened with his Altmaier match. I didn't watch it, but it went 5 sets.
I watched it. And here's what I'll say. And this is, so let's kind of break these 4 guys down in this half, right? So like they all have weaknesses. I think for Sinner, the biggest weakness is when plan A isn't working, he just keeps doing plan A.
Yeah.
And actually very similar to Rublev. I think they have the same problem. Neither of them has a ton of variety. Sinner, I think, is better in terms of the ceiling. He's a better ball striker. Rublev's a little more consistent. But Sinner, when he's on, he's unplayable. I saw the Nakashima match. I don't know if you caught that.
I heard about it. My brother actually went.
Oh, my goodness.
Incredible ball striking, I heard.
Oh, it went from like set a piece, maybe in a competitive match, and then he just took off. He wasn't missing anything. But part of the problem is Nakashima just doesn't have the ceiling to bring more out of him, put him under pressure. But Sinner is a front runner to me. If he gets on and he's striking the ball well, really hard to beat. Rublev is kind of the consistent version of that. I think both of them can be messed up by variety and thrown off maybe by the crowd. I don't think either of them is going to be the crowd favorite against Alcaraz or Tiafoe, though.
Yeah, 100%. And Alcaraz versus Tiafoe, even in with this US Open crowd, let's say they both advance.
They're going to be split. I think they would be split.
50. There's a big supporting.
People love Alcaraz.
Yeah.
He is box. I mean, he is so fun to watch.
I think that'll be the best outcome for the U.S. Open ticket sales is Alcaraz versus Tiafoe.
Oh, for sure. An American in the semis for the first time since Roddick, maybe in '06. Oh
Yeah,
six, yeah. Yeah,
and
and I think the other thing about so weaknesses, what is Alcaraz's biggest weakness? I think it's his return of serve on the backhand side, which
yeah,
Sinner exploited. And then I think his serve is great when it's on, but he can get punished. And that's where Sinner is a tough matchup for him because Sinner punishes his serve. TFO, I think his weaknesses are his second serve is not great, which will get punished by Rublev or Sinner. I think his mentality is a problem. I mean, that's really the question. I think I always said this. I know you don't feel the same way about his ceiling. I really always felt if he put it together, his game is low margin, but his problem was always nerves. I thought he was always a top 10 talent who was held back by nerves.
yeah. No, Tiafoe's game is there, and it's really like his nerves, mentality. I mean, he's getting emotional. I mean, during the match and after the match, which it's fair. Like he has his family and crowd with him there, but
Oh, and
also,
he is also a very atypical tennis rags to riches story.
yeah, yeah. So that's fair too. I think he is primed to take the next step.
Yeah.
He needs to take the next step though, and he can't be a Fritz kind of just getting there and like falling back down right now.
Well,
Uh,
he did beat a big three member. Now Nadal was not great, but
yeah,
TFO previously took Federer to 5 at the Open. He
yeah,
took Djokovic in 4 in Australia, and
yeah,
he got the scalp. I mean, we've been talking about FAA needs a scalp, and Fritz needs
yeah,
a scalp. And look, TFO, maybe it's just lucky, maybe just catching Nadal on the wrong day, but
yeah,
he has a scalp. He finished the job. He got it done. His ball striking was great when it had to be. I
yeah,
would also say these courts, and you were there live, they seem to be playing pretty fast and pretty low bouncing, which is
oh
helping the
yeah,
ball skid through.
yeah,
And I think that benefits TFO, and we'll talk about the other half. It benefited Kyrgios last night too.
yeah,
They hit that low flat backhand through the court.
yeah.
The head-to-head, you were talking about the matchup. Sinner and TFO, not to get ahead of ourselves, is only 2-1 Sinner, and TFO won the last match in Vienna indoors. Alcaraz is 0-1 against TFO, lost in Barcelona on clay last year. So I don't think it's as clear. I don't think he's scared of either of those guys.
It's not clear cut, and they're both pouncing on each other. They both know the other guys like in the news and the one who's the next big thing,
Right.
and they're kind of being overshadowed. Whenever an article comes out about the other person, they may feel that they're being overshadowed.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a statement match for either of them. Like in the U.S. Open
Yeah.
quarterfinals, like I beat the other guy in 20.
And you become the heavy favorite to make the final. And
Exactly.
arguably the favorite, unless you think Nick Kyrgios is now a Grand Slam favorite, because the other half, Nick Kyrgios now has the
Oh,
easiest of anyone. He's got Karen Khachanov, who's made 2 Grand Slam quarters in his career. He made a French Open quarter where he got destroyed by Dominic Thiem in 2019, and way back in 2015, excuse me, and last year he made the quarters at Wimbledon and took Shapo to 5 before losing. Um, I think Khachanov, like you said, it's all about matchups. I think he probably is not ready for this moment, and he probably goes out meekly. But I will say, Kyrgios, what kind of player? So if you're talking about weaknesses, like Kyrgios' least favorite type of player is either someone who bores him to death, or someone who takes away his time, because he's not a great defender and it's hard to make him feel rushed, but you can move him around. And so
yeah,
Djokovic just did a great job at Wimbledon of taking away his time, taking the ball early off the bounce, moving around, and just exposing that part of his game.
yeah,
I'm not saying Khachanov can do that consistently, but Khachanov is a big hitter. He can win sets off Kyrgios because Kyrgios will struggle to return his serve. So all he needs is a break or a tie break, and he can win a set. That's why they went to 5 in Australia. Kyrgios just couldn't break in. Um, I think Kyrgios is the heavy favorite, but my point is that match may actually, ironically, be harder as a matchup for him than the Medvedev match. It's also going to be a night match. It's also going to be a late night match because it's
yeah,
following the women's match. And those matches, they were always listed
yeah,
8:15. They're starting at like 10.
yeah.
So he's going to be up late for that match.
Yeah, I agree with the Kyrgios for Khachanov. It's not going to be easier. It's going to be harder than Medvedev's match because Medvedev is like we talked earlier, is a boring player and kind of
Predictable.
very predictable for Kyrgios. Khachanov, he has a lot more variety. He runs around the forehand a lot more. He kind of has a much more a lot of shots that I saw were a lot more spin and more loopy than
Yeah.
Medvedev's are. So that variety itself is a much different game. Kyrgios, I think he's ready. The way he dominated this performance, it was reminiscent of a top 3 player,
Yeah.
a legendary
But
player.
you have to back it up now. Just like TFO, it's like there is the possibility of letdown. His post match interview, he seemed pretty relax. And he also said his girlfriend makes him go to bed early, which is why he doesn't go partying anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh,
so it seems like he has people around him who are going to prevent him from just celebrating that win and moving on. I think he's not. I think he wants to win the tournament. I think he actually
yeah.
is saying that.
Yeah.
The other quarter, Casper Ruud, Matteo Berrettini, that's going to be a day match. No, that's one that the average casual tennis fan is not going to tune into. I'm fascinated by that match because look, Casper Ruud doesn't get any love from anyone. He
Yeah.
hasn't won a Masters title. He hasn't even won a title over 250 level.
Yeah.
But he has a chance, Arjun, to be the number one ranked player in the world
Yeah.
come Monday. And the way he does that is he beats Berrettini, he beats Kyrgios or Kachanov,
Yeah.
and he gets to the finals. And then if Alcaraz is not there, it doesn't matter what happens in the finals. He is number one in the world come Monday.
So he
And
just
if
has to make the
Alcaraz is
final.
there, he
Yeah.
has to beat him to
Yeah.
become number one. But my point is, Casper Ruud, no one knows who this guy is if you're not
Yeah.
a hardcore tennis fan. He might be your number one. And look, full credit to him. If he can beat Berrettini and Kyrgios back to back, I
Yeah.
think he deserves to be in that running. I think he has a 3-2 head to head against Matteo. Matteo won their only hard court match at the U.S. Open 3 years ago in straight sets. I imagine it may be similar, although I don't want to overrate his chances. My point is, Berrettini is very quiet, sneaky right now. He has not lost to anyone named Nadal and Djokovic in a couple of years in the Slam.
Yeah.
He is not an easy out for anyone. And he is exactly the type of player that would drive Nick Kyrgios a little bit crazy because Kyrgios is not going to get many chances, and Mateo's going to hit aces on his chances, and he doesn't give you anything mentally. The guy is a rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
That and you called it before. I'm going to give you full props on this show. You were the only one of the three of us to say it's not going to be Medvedev, it's not going to be Nadal, it's going to be someone else, and it's going to be Berrettini. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I was about to say that. I am so excited. At least one of my probably 10 predictions came through, and it's Berrettini. I think he's going to win the tournament still. I think against Ruud, he will take care of business. His mental strength out of the other 8 players on the in the that are left. Well, hopefully Alcaraz and Sinner. Anyways, whoever's still playing right now is, I think his mental strength is the best out of all of them. And so mentally, I think he'll win. He needs to make sure he continues to dominate his forehand, dominate his slice, come to the net and hit those big serves, and just against Ruud, they've been going back and forth, winning matches against each other. No one's had a winning streak against each other, I think.
Yeah.
So this time it's just based on that. It's Berrettini's turn to win. But when it comes down to it, he hasn't had a bad match in a while. He's especially Grand Slams. He's been right there in the semis, in the finals, and just waiting to win. I think Ruud, he's been taking care of business in all his matches this tournament, especially in a long match with TP, a great player. However, in the 5th set, he stepped up. A TP probably didn't as well. I didn't watch, but TP probably.
Ruud is fitter. I mean, I would actually say Berrettini is pretty fit too. These guys are really, really fit.
Yeah, and I watched him last year, Berrettini. He was a tank on the court, especially Louis Armstrong, or he'll play Arthur Ashe probably. But that's going to be a daytime match. No one really cares about this match, but that's probably the match that I'm watching for. That match, Berrettini will take the championship.
Well, I think here's other Berrettini stat. I mentioned a couple. He's 7-1 in 5-set matches.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Really, really good. And it's not surprising if you watch the guy. The guy does not make mistakes on break points.
Yeah.
The guy is, I think, here's the thing. In recent months, people have been saying Nick Kyrgios is the best server on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's legit. He's been awesome. Mm-hmm. But I think Matteo Berrettini is got to be up there. He is a ridiculously good server because he would not be the player he is if he didn't have that serve, and his forehand is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. He rips that forehand. He's pouncing on it early, much earlier than any other player on tour that I can tell. Kyrgios gets it pretty early too, but his racket head speed, he just tears the fuzz off the ball every time he hits. On the other side, like if he were to play a Sinner or Alcaraz, I think Alcaraz is a best one to give him a fight, maybe take it four
Yeah, they had a
5
great
sets.
match in Australia. You're talking about Berrettini?
Yeah, to take Berrettini in the finals, to play Berrettini in the finals. I think Alcaraz has the biggest chance to, fight him and maybe squeak out a win in 4 or 5 sets. But he's not going to make it easy for anyone to beat him. Um,
Yeah,
so
they're
after all that, I think Mateo has to win this one, and the opportunity is he's knocking at the door right now.
it's really hard, like you said, to pick a winner. I think that it's really those four guys, and it's interesting that Sinner and Alcaraz are meeting the quarters because we might see whoever wins that match have a quote unquote easier semi than the other half. But um, I think the one thing that will be interesting is does Nick Kyrgios's fitness get tested? They were talking about it during the match. Was Medvedev going to take him deep? And I think Kyrgios looks like he's in pretty good shape right now. He doesn't look like he's getting tired. I think he's put in the work. Kyrgios and Berrettini, one career match on grass in 2019. Berrettini crushed him, straight sets.
Okay.
Berrettini Alcaraz, epic match in Australia this year. Had another epic in Vienna that Alcaraz won the third set tiebreak. I think it would be very tight. And then finally, Sinner and Berrettini, that'd be the all Italian final. We've never had two Italians in a Grand Slam final before.
Oh, wow.
They've never played on tour, as far as I understand. They've been doubles partners, but they've never actually played on tour, which is interesting. So for me, I know I'm not allowed to make predictions because my guy just lost yesterday. But if I had to pick, if you put a gun to my head and said, who's going to win this tournament? It's really tough for me to pick. The emotional heart part of me wants to say Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah.
Because he is the only guy in the draw right now who's ever won a Masters title on hard court.
Mm-hmm.
He is the highest ranked player left.
Yeah.
And I think we forgot what a great spring on hard courts he had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it all comes down to that match against Sinner. I think if he wins that match against Sinner, he's going to win the tournament.
Okay.
But that's a tough ask. Sinner is a tough matchup for him on this surface.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, all I'll say is it's funny. I think people are going to say that the end of the big three era is going to bring down ratings and it's going to make tennis less interesting because we don't know who's going to win. I'm like, this is great. This is fascinating. This is where guys can step into the vacuum. Medvedev losing to Kyrgios probably inspired TFO today. And now I really think if you give truth serum to all 8 guys left in the draw, assuming Alcaraz and Sinner win tonight, I don't think there's a single guy who will say, I don't think I'm going to win this tournament. I think they all think they can win.
Yeah, I saw Tiafoe in his post match interview. He was like, "I'm here to win. I'm going to win this tournament, and I'm not stopping until he does." And so he believes he can win. He believes he can beat Rublev.
Well, yeah. Look,
so they
in his head. I mean, if you're him, if I'm Tiafoe's best friend, I'm next down. I'm like, okay, you beat Rublev on this court last year in 5 sets, and you weren't as good then, right? Yeah. And he's had a tough year. Rublev has not been awesome this year. Mm-hmm. You've beaten Alcaraz before, and you've beaten Sinner before in your most recent match. And those guys, they're young. They're not going to have the crowd with them. Maybe Alcaraz will be split. You can win that. And then Kyrgios, he should have beaten Kyrgios in DC.
Yeah.
Right? He was up. Well, it was at DC. I'm pretty sure it was DC. I don't remember if it was DC or Canada. But he had Kyrgios in a bind, multiple match points, and it was DC. Yeah. Multiple match points, and ended up losing that match. Like at some point,
oh yeah,
that was an awful loss. And I think that
he beat Berrettini the last time they played too.
My point is he is not scared of any of the guys left. That's why they were asking him after the match. They're like, "Oh, are you nervous about the next match?" And he kind of laughed. Yeah. Because this was the match to be nervous, was today.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be nervous. The question is whether he has a letdown. And then do we see a 2020 US Open scenario where both guys, whoever is playing in the final, both guys are shaking in their boots and they're frightened and it's a low quality match? I don't think we're going to see that because I think if Berrettini's there, he's tough. I think Kyrgios is going to pull it off if he gets there. I don't think these guys are going to underperform. I think we're set up for a great final week.
Yeah. This is it's crazy to not see any of the top 3 even in the quarters or anymore. But this is a tournament. It almost feels like a Masters tournament now in a sense that any one of these guys can win it. And it's got the US Open brand on it and the stakes of the US Open. But all of these guys, there's going to be a new US Open winner. And it's just exciting to see. I'm very fascinated. I agree that this era of tennis we're stepping into is going to be a little more exciting than the last 5 years, where it's like kind of bad guy
Shock.
Djokovic just winning.
Yeah.
Um,
Shock. Yeah.
yeah,
Last note before we break, we went along. Rankings and just interesting stuff to track.
yeah,
Like we talked about Alcaraz and Ruud going for number one. It's on the table for both of them. But don't forget, Jannik Sinner can move up towards the top five, close to it, if he wins the tournament. And more importantly, for implications, guys who are playing like top 10, 15 players, Tiafoe and Kyrgios. Kyrgios has already proven or assured himself he's going to be top 20, even if he loses this next match. If he wins that match, he's going to move up to 17. He's going to keep moving up.
yeah.
But Tiafoe, if he wins his next match, will be a top 20 player for the first time in his career.
That's huge.
And some guys, all they need to do is break that ceiling, right? Stan Wawrinka was the most extreme example. Guy who lingered in the top 20 and just could not break through and finally just broke through. And then he was pretty much a top 5 player after that.
Yeah.
So will be interesting. That's always fascinating is who takes that win and who builds on it.
Yeah.
Who has that win and then fades away, and that's it. Health has a lot to do with it, but a lot has to do, can you back it up? And right now we're going to find out in the next probably 48 to 72 hours, who wants it? Who's ready for the smoke? Who wants to win this title? Because like you said, I know Berrettini wants this title.
Yeah.
I know Carlos Alcaraz wants this title.
We know
Kyrgios going to win it.
Yeah.
Nick Kyrgios wants this title. Who else wants to win? Because even if you're Karen Khachanov, I could be Khachanov's best friend. I can invent some sort of argument. Say, you beat Kyrgios that one time, and you can hang with them. And then you get Berrettini, and he's been struggling, and you could beat Berrettini. And next thing you know, Karen Khachanov, you're in the U.S. Open final, and that's just one match. My point is, you could start extrapolating that logic, whoever you are.
Yeah. There's no right answer. There's no Nadal or Djokovic like easy win, easy prediction. This is kind of up for grabs right now.
And just one note before we break, Ilya Ivashka, we did the reverse jinx on him. Hadn't won a service game at all until we started this podcast. Is now up 6-5 in the second set on serve.
Oh, well done,
Ilya Ivashka.
Maybe my $10 bet might come through.
Oh yeah, maybe he'll win a set. Arjun, you'll win that 4-set. Well, thanks for joining. Great show. I'm very excited. Obviously, we'll be back to discuss the semis later this week.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you. See you later.